Imagine this scenario. You have an elderly patient, maybe in his 70s, and he's dealing with this incredibly rare, potentially fatal blood condition. But against the odds, he's pulled back from the brink.
Right, thanks to a very specific, very tailored medical treatment.
Exactly. And for almost 2 years, this treatment works wonders. It stabilizes him. His body actually starts to, regenerate crucial blood cells again. It's like he's been given this precious extra time.
A real turnaround.
A real turnaround. And then just like that, it stops. Cure fails. The patient starts fading fast, getting weaker every single day.
And the terrifying part is, it's not because the disease itself came roaring back, it's because the medicine, the very thing saving him, isn't working anymore.
So the question becomes, is this just a tragic medical setback? Treatment resistance, something unavoidable?
Or is it something else, something calculated, maybe even orchestrated by someone close, someone trusted, someone who could, weaponize subtlety itself?
That ambiguity is chilling, isn't it? The way a slow decline can mimic a natural illness so perfectly.
It really is.
Yeah.
Looks like tragedy on the surface, but the investigator here has the challenge of proving it's actually, a crime. A long game kind of crime.
It makes you ask, what's the most undetectable way to commit murder?
And as the sources we're looking at suggest, sometimes the answer isn't adding poison, but rather subtly taking away life itself.
That's the razor's edge we're exploring today. Welcome to our deep dive. We're digging into a really complex set of narrative sources about this bizarre but frankly brilliant investigation.
We're following the work of this highly respected, maybe slightly eccentric investigator. He's mostly known as the Barrister.
Though if you're familiar with the original source material, you'll definitely know him as Byomkesh. He and his associate, John Harris, or Ajit as he's known in the original, get called in to solve this puzzle.
Yeah, and our mission today isn't just to figure out who did it. We need to uncover the precise method, the technical mechanics of the tampering.
And peel back the layers on the motive, which turns out to be incredibly personal, driving this kind of slow burn revenge that simmered for years.
It's fascinating because we're really at the crossroads here of medical science, psychology, and even a bit of moral philosophy.
Definitely. This case gives us a really unique angle on justice, too. A kind of justice that, it seems to bypass the courts altogether.
Yeah, it focuses much more on the weight of conscience, the internal burden.
Okay, let's unpack this. So the whole thing kicks off, as these investigations sometimes do, not with sirens and flashing lights, but with a quiet alarm bell.
Right, far from the usual legal channels.
The barrister, who the sources describe as having a mind that's always curious, even when lacking a case, is approached by someone in real distress, a man named Dr. James Samuels. Okay, and just for clarity, as we go through this, we'll use the names. The barrister, his associate Ajit, the patient Gordon Chambers, and the daughter-in-law Diana Chambers. Makes it a bit easier to track.
Good call. So, Dr. Samuels, who is this guy?
Well, Dr. Samuels, or Juban Samanta in the original sources, he's our starting point. He's a homeopath. He practices out in the countryside, a place we can call Maplewood or Bonogram. And in this area, homeopathy is actually quite valued, right? Maybe more accessible or affordable than city hospitals.
Exactly. It's a respected form of treatment there. But there's a crucial detail about Dr. Samuels himself.
Yes. The sources are clear on this. He's not actually a licensed medical doctor in the conventional sense. He studied homeopathy, knows his stuff, but
he failed the final licensing exam. And that's not just a minor biographical detail. It kind of feeds into his professional insecurity.
you can see why he'd be terrified if this case collapses publicly, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's respected in his community for his results, these inexpensive, successful remedies, but his actual, official authority is a bit shaky.
And his fear is totally understandable because the stakes here are literally life and death. His patient, Gordon Chambers.
This elderly man, maybe nearing 70.
He's suffering from this really devastating, quite rare blood condition.
Let's try and clarify that a bit for everyone listening. This isn't just simple anemia, it's much more serious.
Right. His body has basically lost the ability to regenerate blood cells the way it should.
Yeah.
The bone marrow isn't functioning properly.
So he can't make enough red blood cells, white blood cells, the essentials. He's constantly at risk of severe anemia, dangerous blood pressure fluctuations.
And eventually, the whole system could just fail because those life-sustaining cells aren't being replaced. It's like the body's main factory for vital parts is slowly shutting down.
Which means any treatment needs to be super consistent, pretty aggressive.
Absolutely. And that's what makes Dr. Samuels' initial success so remarkable, almost miraculous, really. And it probably boosted his confidence in his methods quite a bit.
For nearly 2 years, this homeopathic treatment he devised, delivered using these tiny white sugar pellets, dosed with the remedy, it had actually worked.
The patient, Gordon, was stable. Even better, the sources say his body was slowly starting to show signs of regenerating cells on its own again. Painstakingly slow, but it was happening.
He was recovering, beating the odds.
But now, Dr. Samuels tells the barrister that recovery has just plummeted. It's a catastrophic reversal.
The patient is deteriorating fast. All those hard-won gains, that slow regeneration process, it's all being wiped out. Gordon's getting weaker by the day. Death seems imminent.
And the horrifying thing is, the medicine that was his lifeline seems to have turned useless, like dust.
This leads Dr. Samuels to his central agonizing problem. He explains it to the barrister. He prepares these doses himself.
Yeah, he gets the blank sugar pellets, he applies the homeopathic solution, which is often highly diluted anyway, and puts them back into the vials.
So from his perspective, tampering seems almost impossible. He controls the preparation. The vials are sealed.
Yet, the result, the patient failing, screams that something is wrong with the medicine. He even mentions that a recent batch he got back from Gordon's house seemed different. Lighter, maybe. Diluted.
He just can't square it. If he made the medicine correctly and the vials were sealed, how could the dose be ineffective? Is he suddenly losing his skill? Did he make a mistake? Or is the disease just overpowering the treatment now?
It's this paradox, the carefully prepared medicine versus the failing patient, that really grabs the barrister's attention. It smells less like simple malpractice or disease progression and more like interference.
Calculated interference.
The urgency is clear. The barrister knows he needs to act fast. If it's tampering, and it continues.
Gordon Chambers won't last long. He'll die slowly, painfully, probably within weeks.
But the barrister, as is often his way according to the sources, needs a moment. He can't just rush off to the countryside immediately. He needs to process, to synthesize the initial facts.
So he does the next best thing. He sends his trusted associate, Ajit or Arjan Harris. Ajit's mission is crystal clear. Get to Maplewood or Bonogram, blend in, maybe stay near the patient's house, observe everything, collect raw data, and crucially the most important task, get an actual sample of the medicine Gordon is currently taking from his bedside.
This is classic barrister strategy.
Yeah.
He's not interested in village gossip or who might dislike Gordon at this stage. Not yet.
No, he needs hard evidence. Is the medicine compromised, yes or no? And if yes, how?
Ajit is the perfect man for this. Meticulous, observant. He's the barrister's eyes and ears on the ground.
And this setup, this sending of Ajit first, it lays the groundwork for the key investigative puzzle that emerges next. So Ajit heads out to Maplewood. He finds the patient's home described as this, old two-story house, probably impressive once, reflecting Gordon Chambers' wealth.
But now maybe a bit run down. Paint peeling, a sense of decay mirroring the old man's health.
Yeah, exactly. Ajit gets himself inside, maybe using a cover story, perhaps he's a researcher, or an acquaintance of Dr. Samuels, something plausible, and he starts observing.
And he quickly gets the lay of the land, identifies the key people inside the house. Gordon Chambers, the patient, his son Gopal, his daughter-in-law Diana, and there's a granddaughter too.
Ajit's trained to read people, notice the subtleties, and he apparently zeroes in on Diana almost immediately.
The sources mention him observing this tension in her eyes, like she's carrying years of hidden burdens,
Yeah, the atmosphere in the house isn't warm or comforting. It feels more like resentment, maybe fear simmering beneath the surface.
But Ajit's primary goal isn't psychoanalysis just yet. It's confirming Dr. Samuel's gut feeling. Is the medicine compromised?
And he manages to confirm it pretty quickly, apparently on the very first night he's there.
Under the cover of darkness, or maybe pretending to check on the patient sympathetically, he finds a way to swap the small vial of white pellets from Gordon's bedside table.
He replaces it with an identical placebo vial he brought with him, smart move, and takes the actual sample Gordon was using back to examine privately.
And the examination is, well, it's stark. He compares those bedside pellets with the genuine samples he got from Dr. Samuels.
The difference is immediately obvious, damning even. Ajit notes the pellets from the bedside look too perfect, too uniform.
And crucially, they lack that faint but distinct medicinal smell that the real homeopathic doses have. Even highly diluted, there's usually something.
His conclusion seems straightforward at first, but it's also terrifying.
It looks like a complete substitution. Someone has swapped the actual medicine for plain inert sugar pellets.
Total replacement.
But this is where the investigation hits its first major wall. It's a technical problem, a contradiction that Ajit, The practical observer couldn't reconcile right away.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting, because if it was a total replacement, that finding completely contradicts how the patient was declining.
Precisely. Let's dig into the technical details Ajit gathered about Gordon's medication schedule. We know it's a severe condition, needing constant support.
Gordon needs that medicine 4 times a day, same time, every day, on those little sugar pellets. And Ajit uncovers this absolutely critical medical constraint. For this specific blood condition, with this specific treatment, you cannot miss a dose. Even taking a slightly reduced amount, something that drops below a certain therapeutic threshold, it nullifies the benefit of the entire day's treatment. The body needs all 4 complete hits, so to speak, to keep that regeneration process going.
It's an all-or-nothing system.
So, think about it. If the culprit had totally replaced the medicine with plain sugar, like Ajit's initial findings suggested.
Gordon's decline wouldn't have been slow and gradual over the past month.
No way. A patient needing 4 doses a day, suddenly getting 0 active ingredient, he would have crashed almost immediately, catastrophically.
He likely would have died within days, maybe a week at most. He certainly wouldn't have slowly withered over several weeks, which is what Dr. Samuels described.
The slow decline implies that some active medicine must have been getting through. Or maybe the failure to reach that crucial daily threshold was gradual, not absolute?
Right. This technical detail becomes huge. It tells the barrister, once Ajit reports back, that the initial conclusion, total substitution, must be wrong. It's a red herring.
The crime had to be more sophisticated than just swapping vials.
So other possibilities start to fall away. Ajit did check, could Gordon himself just not be taking the medicine properly? Non-compliance.
But that didn't track. The old man was terrified of his illness, fighting hard to live. Ajit confirmed the vials were being emptied at the right times, 4 times a day. Gordon was definitely taking something.
They also considered outside enemies. Gordon Chambers wasn't exactly Mr. Popularity.
No, the sources paint him as pretty ruthless. A wealthy guy who'd acquired land from struggling farmers, even bankrupted some, including, as we'll find out, Diana's own father.
He had plenty of enemies who might want revenge. But again, the method seems wrong for an outsider. Why this slow, complicated, medically intricate approach?
Wouldn't an outside enemy just use poison? Or hire someone for a quicker, cleaner job?
The very complexity, the gradual nature, it strongly suggests someone with intimate knowledge of the patient's routine, the medicine's specific requirements.
And crucially, someone with continuous, repeated access to the medicine. It points inwards, towards the house.
Towards someone who perhaps needed the death to look natural, like fate.
So Ajit realizes he's hit the limit of what simple observation and collecting physical samples can tell him. The real crime isn't just that the medicine was compromised, but how. The logic of the dosage failure is the key.
Right. The physical evidence, pure sugar, seems to contradict the clinical evidence, slow decline.
So Ajit sends an urgent message back to the barrister. You need to come. The medicine's definitely bad, the patient's fading, but the how makes no sense based on what I've found.
It's a paradox only the barrister's deductive mind can likely solve. And the stage is perfectly set. The barrister needs to figure out, why would seemingly total replacement lead to such a gradual collapse?
Okay, so the barrister arrives in Maplewood. He's got the vial of pellets Ajit sent him, and he's already mulled over this contradiction, the pure sugar versus the slow decline.
Characteristically, he doesn't waste time with, broad interviews around the village or lengthy chats with the doctor again. His focus is laser sharp.
Right onto the dynamics inside the Chambers house.
His first move is surgical. He goes directly to the patient, to Gordon Chambers himself, and he asks the single most critical question at this point.
Who gives you your medicine?
Exactly. It's the logical next step.
Yeah.
If the tampering requires regular, sustained access, who has that opportunity built into their daily routine?
And Gordon confirms it. It's Diana, his daughter-in-law. She handles one of the 4 daily doses specifically, the one right after lunch, every day.
That consistency, that specific time slot, that's the potential weak point in the system the barrister was looking for. Diana has regular, predictable access, not just to administer that one dose, but likely to the main vial throughout the day as she helps care for him.
So now the investigation shifts gears, right? From the physical evidence, the how, to the psychological, the why.
The barrister has the means, access to the vial, and the opportunity, the daily dosing routine.
Yeah. Now
Now he needs to confirm the motive, and he doesn't beat around the bush.
he confronts Diana directly, not with physical proof. He knows Ajit's finding of pure sugar isn't the whole story and might be hard to prove legally anyway.
No, he confronts her with psychological certainty. The sources describe her reaction. She flinches, maybe, but tries to keep a composed front initially.
But the barrister just calmly, firmly lays out the narrative he's pieced together, her story, her suffering. He points straight to the root of the likely motive. Years and years of simmering resentment. This man she's now dutifully caring for, Gordon Chambers. He's the man who ruined her father financially, leading eventually to his death years ago.
She was forced by circumstance, maybe marriage, maybe lack of options, to live under the roof of the man who destroyed her family. Essentially a prisoner in her own home.
Which brings us to that crucial timing element. If she hated him for years, maybe a decade or more, why act now?
The barrister connects the dots. The patient's decline started only about a month before the investigation began. And the sources clarify this timeline lines up exactly with the recent death of Diana's own father.
Ah, that's the trigger.
It seems so. Her father's death wasn't just grief. It was like the final straw, the final injustice. It maybe broke down whatever psychological barrier had held her back for years.
The revenge wasn't just against Gordon anymore. It was almost like this delayed, desperate act of loyalty or justice for her dead father.
The barrister's confrontation is apparently quite powerful because he doesn't just accuse her. He explains the nature of the crime back to her.
He says something like, you didn't want a quick kill. You wanted him to suffer. You wanted his death to be slow, drawn out, to look like his own body failing him.
He recognized the cruelty in the chosen method. The delusion wasn't just about being subtle. It was about prolonging the agony for this man who, perhaps, feared death above all else.
And faced with this understanding, this reflection of her own dark intent, she finally breaks. She confesses not necessarily the act in explicit detail, but the motive, the years of resentment, the pain Gordon caused. The intent becomes clear. Make the death look natural, maximize the psychological torment for Gordon, and avoid suspicion falling on her. Okay, but here's where this story takes a really sharp, unexpected turn. This is the ethical core of it all.
Right. The barrister has confirmed the motive. He's figured out something is wrong with the medicine, saving Gordon's life by interrupting whatever was happening.
But then he delivers this absolutely shocking verdict. He warns Diana, tells her to return to her senses. He threatens to expose her only if Gordon dies unnaturally in the future.
He does not call the police. He doesn't hand over the sugar pellets Ajit found or detail his deductions to the authorities.
He just lets her go, with a warning.
Essentially, yes. And this decision perfectly illustrates the barrister's unique, sometimes controversial, moral code.
Later, when Ajit and Dr. Samuels are maybe questioning this inaction, the barrister explains his reasoning. He says something profound. No, the guilty must live with their guilt. Sometimes that's punishment enough.
Wow. Let's just pause on that for a second because that's a huge departure from conventional justice, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's incredibly risky, you could argue. He's identifying someone who attempted murder, albeit passively, and he's leaving them free, constrained only by a moral threat and his own surveillance, essentially.
What's the thinking? Well, the barrister seems to operate on a highly contextual form of justice. He recognizes that Diana's actions didn't come out of nowhere. They stem from profound, long-term psychological damage inflicted by the victim himself.
So he sees her less as an inherently evil person and more as someone pushed beyond her breaking point by Gordon's past tyranny.
Perhaps. And in his view, forcing her to live with the knowledge of what she tried to do, knowing she failed, knowing an investigator is watching her every move, that's a heavier, more enduring punishment than prison.
Incarceration might just harden her, maybe. Whereas this internal sentence...
It's constant. It's a life sentence of guilt, fear, and moral debt. The punishment, in a way, mirrors the crime she attempted slow psychological torment.
It's definitely an act of profound moral intervention. Maybe even arrogant, some might say.
It certainly prioritizes psychological reckoning, maybe even a chance at redemption, over simple legal punishment. He neutralized the immediate threat, exposed the crime to the perpetrator, and then basically appointed her own conscience as the judge and jailer.
With the implicit threat that if she ever slips up again, he'll be there with the proof.
It's a heavy burden, no doubt.
Mm.
But to really appreciate the twisted genius of the crime itself, we need to circle back from the motive to the actual mechanism.
Right. How exactly did she achieve this slow decline? Why was simple dilution so effective and so hard to spot? Okay, so we've got the central puzzle. Ajit's initial check suggested pure sugar, total replacement. But Gordon's slow decline meant that couldn't be right. Some medicine had to be getting through.
This is where the barrister's deduction really shines. He likely consulted with homeopathic experts, perhaps back in the city using the samples Ajit sent him, before confronting Diana. He realized the strategy wasn't total replacement, it was dilution.
Partial replacement designed specifically to exploit the treatment's requirements.
Exactly. This is the technical core of the whole case. The analysis of the pellets, combined with the understanding of the dosage needs, pointed to a very sophisticated mixing technique.
Let's break that down. What Diana was doing, the barrister deduced, was taking the vial of real medicated pellets.
And she was adding a significant number of blank, identical-looking sugar pellets into that same vial.
So she wasn't dumping out the good stuff and refilling with blanks. She was just watering it down, reducing the concentration of active pellets within the total mix.
Precisely. And this explains why Dr. Samuels was so confused earlier, why the medicine might have seemed lighter or still had a faint medicinal smell.
Because some genuine pellets were still in there, just fewer of them relative to the blanks.
The vial wasn't entirely useless, it was just rendered therapeutically useless because the effective dose fell below the necessary level. It's a subtle but absolutely critical distinction.
Okay, to really get why this method was so perfect, so insidious, we need to talk about that idea you mentioned earlier, the therapeutic threshold.
Yes. Think of it like this: Gordon's body, to fight this condition, needed a certain amount of support every day. Let's call it, say, 100 units of medicine power.
And that 100 units was delivered through the 4 daily doses, right? So 25 units per dose.
Exactly. 4 doses of 25 units each, hitting that 100-unit daily minimum needed to keep the regeneration going, to maintain the bridge integrity, so to speak.
Now, Diana starts mixing in the blank pellets. Let's say she achieves maybe a 50-50 mix over time, half real, half blank.
What happens then? Suddenly, each dose Gordon takes isn't delivering 25 units anymore. If half the pellets are blank, each dose might only deliver, say, 12 or 13 units of actual medicine power.
So his total daily intake drops from the necessary 100 units down to maybe 50 or 52 units?
And because his condition requires that consistent high-level input, that 100-unit threshold dropping below it, even if not to zero, means the whole therapeutic process starts to fail. Slowly, perhaps, but inevitably, the bridge starts to crumble.
This dilution method gave Diana incredible cover.
Triple-layered, really. First, like we said, the faint smell and appearance could fool a casual check, even Dr. Samuels initially.
Second, because Gordon was still getting some active ingredient, it prevented that immediate catastrophic collapse that would scream poisoning or total substitution. It made the decline look like the disease naturally worsening.
And third, it perfectly exploited the vulnerability of that rigid 4-times-a-day schedule. Diana, handling that post-lunch dose every single day, had the perfect recurring opportunity.
She didn't have to do it all at once. She could gradually add more and more blank pellets over days or weeks, subtly lowering the concentration until it dipped below that critical point.
It's a sustained, almost passive form of murder. She's not actively putting poison in. She's passively ensuring the life support system doesn't get enough fuel.
The body then does the work for her. And she maintains plausible deniability. I just gave him the pellets that were in the vial the doctor provided.
The sheer calculation involved, the patients are required to execute this over weeks without being detected. That really underscores the depth of the resentment, the coldness of the motive.
The time factor itself becomes evidence for the dilution method. A quick substitution wouldn't have taken weeks to show effects. So the barrister's achievement wasn't just solving a whodunit. It was reverse engineering this incredibly subtle failure mechanism, one specifically tailored to the victim's biology and the unique demands of his treatment. He worked backward from the symptom slow death despite compliance to the only method that could produce it: gradual dilution below the therapeutic threshold. So let's pull all these threads together now. It really seems the entire crime balances on these 2 pillars, right?
Yeah, Diana's deep-seated psychological trauma from her past, fueled by Gordon's actions against her father.
And the very specific technical requirements of Gordon's medical treatment that need for precise, consistent 4-times-a-day dosing.
The resentment was the fuel, simmering for years, but it only ignited into active vengeance when her father's death provided that final devastating trigger, roughly a month before things started going downhill for Gordon.
And the opportunity seemed almost trivial, just being responsible for one of the 4 daily doses.
But she leveraged that seemingly small access point brilliantly, or perhaps chillingly, by contaminating the entire source vial through dilution. She turned that one point of contact into a way to undermine the entire day's treatment.
It's probably worth just briefly touching on why the other potential suspects were ruled out so definitively. Ajit did consider the son, Gopal, and the household staff.
Right. Gopal, the son, was dismissed fairly quickly. The sources suggest he just wasn't like his ruthless father in character. While maybe not thrilled with Gordon, this slow, cruel, psychologically complex method didn't seem to fit his personality.
Plus, as the heir, he stood to inherit eventually anyway. There wasn't a strong financial or acceleration motive for such a risky, intricate plot.
And the servants. While they might have had general grievances, there's no indication in the sources of the kind of deep, personal, ruinous history that Diana had with Gordon.
They lacked that specific, powerful motive for this kind of intimate, long-game revenge. The crime felt too personal, too tailored.
It really had to be someone living closely with the victim, observing him daily, involved directly in his care, and carrying that heavy burden of past trauma. Only Diana fit that profile constructed from both the psychological motive and the technical details of the crime.
Which brings us back to the barrister's final confrontation and that concluding warning. It's the closing act of this whole moral play. He essentially lays it out for her. Look, the evidence I have now, these diluted homeopathic pellets, might be tricky to make stick in a formal court. It's subtle. But my knowledge of what you did, he implies, is absolute. And if Gordon should relapse, if he should die unnaturally now,
Then the barrister wouldn't hesitate. He'd find the legally solid proof the second time around. He'd make sure of it.
it's a powerful threat. He's essentially saying, I've stopped the physical act. Now you need to stop the internal one, the hatred.
He forces her to confront the path she was on, telling her, as the sources quote, a crime creates another new criminal. He's warning her that continuing down this road of vengeance will ultimately destroy her, regardless of Gordon's fate. She has to let go of the past.
So, thinking about this whole case, what's the takeaway for us? What does it all mean?
Well, I think this case is a fascinating, if grim, lesson in how complex systems fail. It could be a medical treatment, like here, but it could also be a business project, a supply chain, anything intricate.
The failure often isn't some huge, obvious catastrophe, is it?
Exactly. It's rarely total abandonment or a complete breakdown. More often, it's a subtle degradation. A targeted reduction in one critical input that pushes the whole system just slightly below the threshold it needs to function effectively.
Like Diana reducing the drug concentration just enough to make the whole treatment fail.
Precisely. It highlights how crucial precision and consistency are for success in many areas. And Diana exploited that very need for precision to guarantee failure.
So it's a call for vigilance, maybe? When something that was working suddenly starts to falter, don't just assume external factors or systemic issues immediately.
Right. Consider the possibility of a small, targeted sabotage. Look for that one critical input that might have been subtly diminished, just enough to tip the balance. The most vital element of a successful system can often be its most vulnerable point.
And in Gordon's case, that critical element was the consistent, sufficient concentration of the medicine across all 4 doses each day.
Diana couldn't physically stop him taking all 4 doses, but she found a way to compromise the source of those doses, undermining the entire regimen from within. #HagOutro.
Well, this has certainly been an intense deep dive. We've journeyed through complex motives, a really subtle methodology, and some profound questions about moral accountability.
Yeah, we started with that delicate balance of life-saving medicine, specifically homeopathy in this case, and how critical precise dosing can be, especially for chronic or severe conditions.
We uncovered this incredibly sophisticated method of revenge, not poisoning, but dilution, carefully calculated to prolong suffering and, crucially, to mimic natural illness, thereby deflecting legal suspicion.
And perhaps most compellingly, we explored the barrister's final choice, his decision to opt for a kind of justice of conscience over formal legal prosecution.
Judging that the internal punishment, the lifelong burden of guilt, combined with his own watchful presence, would be a heavier and maybe more fitting sentence for a crime that was itself born from deep trauma.
Which leads us perfectly into our final provocative thought for you, our listeners, to mull over. The barrister sentenced Diana to live under the shadow of her own actions, believing it a greater penance than prison. So, here's the question. If a crime stems from profound psychological damage perhaps inflicted by the victim themselves years prior, is the formal justice system always the most appropriate or only path? What is the true weight of a moral debt like that? And how long does it take for a conscience, once fully awakened to its own transgression, to truly pay it off? Can it ever?
The sources leave us contemplating Diana, now tasked with caring for the very man she attempted to kill, knowing her freedom hangs precariously on his continued survival.
That is indeed a uniquely powerful and perhaps deeply unsettling form of moral reckoning.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the barrister and the diluted medicine. We hope it's giving you plenty to think about.
Until next time.